Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's photo vlog where we are going wide. Hello everybody. I have come to Frome, which is further south than I normally go. Lovely little place, and I'm in by a castle called Nunney Castle. And the reason that I've come here is, first of all, you can go in without paying, which makes more sense than you think, because if you go to somewhere where you've got to pay, you've got to book in advance, and I didn't necessarily know that I was going to be here today. Anyway, there's a drone up there, which is quite fun and interesting. Anyway, Nunney Castle, it's a lovely little place. Very small sort of castle, 14th century, I think. And I've come here specifically because this week I bought a new lens. And the new lens I got is the one that's on the camera right now. It's the Fuji 10-24mm. And this isn't really going to be a lens review. And I'm probably not going to talk too much about this particular lens in particular. What I really wanted to talk about today was actually using wider angle lenses, because one of the things that I don't think a lot of people end up doing, not everybody, of course, some people do, but I think a lot of people miss out on the kind of the wider end of the scale because they're stuck with an 18mm lens. So if you're using, this is, like I said, 10-24 on an APS-C camera, what have you got to look out for? How is it in terms of framing? What are the things that you've got to worry about and not worry about? I thought that would be an interesting topic to tackle. It's also interesting to take a look at a castle. Now, you can't see the castle behind you, maybe just a little bit in the frame. The reason that I thought a castle would be a good idea is because one of the major things that people tend to use wider angle lenses for is photographing buildings, and castles in particular are something that I'm kind of interested in. So in this instance, it's, you know, how do you keep your verticals straight when essentially you've got to tilt up at a really big thing? You can't be at the same level of a castle unless you've got a drone. You can't be kind of looking down on the castle either. What do you do? How do you deal with that? And to be honest, the quick answer is you've got to do it in Photoshop or in Lightroom or in one of those things which can help you correct your verticals. Anyway, first things first, I'm going to go around the castle, take a few pictures, and then at some point I'll do a setup. I can actually show you why I'm choosing to do certain things and why I'm using this particular camera and lens combination to do it. Before I go on, I just wanted to show you what I was working with today. So I took two shots to show the different focal ranges of the lens. The first one is zoomed in all the way at 24mm, and this is the sort of framing that I'm more used to. Until now, my widest lens was 18mm, and you get a very similar sort of look from that lens, a little bit further out, of course. In contrast, here's the same shot taken in the same location but at 10mm. And you can see here that we've got an awful lot more foreground in the shot, and that's what many landscape photographers rely on to get those massive vistas with the slightly exaggerated foreground interest at the front of the frame. Finally, let's take a look at the first castle shot I've taken, and this one has been straightened in Photoshop as well. Now, today was that kind of chocolate box weather that many photographers hate, but we can't always choose when we're going to shoot, and there are a lot of photographers, hobbyist photographers in particular, who will find themselves needing to shoot in these conditions or just not getting any shots at all. Okay, so I've perched myself precariously on the bounding wall to the castle. Now, what I have to be a little bit wary of here is there's a deep moat in front of me. I'm actually quite a long way off, but there are some parts of the walkway where that moat's actually quite close to the pavement. So I've put myself a little bit more out of the way so that I don't have a problem with, you know, if people need to cross at all, they can still do that. I'm still just trying to maneuver the camera around a little bit, which I haven't quite got straight, I have to admit. But this is why you have a ball head, isn't it? This is why you do those things. And I've got, of course, the leveler on the camera, which I can make sure that this is all perfectly level and lock that off when I've got something that I'm pleased with. Now, in terms of actually taking a shot today, I've got this on f11 at 250. It's a really, really bright day today. It means that the ISO is right the way down. We're at our native ISO at 160. 2/50th of a second should be plenty. I don't have to worry too much about the fact that we're, you know, on a tripod or anything like that. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about it anyway, but I could handhold all of these shots. The reason why I'm not, and I've said this in a couple of videos before, is because I want to be able to show you exactly what I'm doing. And to do that, sometimes it's easier not to have your hands encumbered by holding a camera at the same time. So there's a couple of things that you need to know if you're going to be using a more wide angle lens. And if you have already used a full frame camera, or if you are using a full frame camera and you've got like a 16mm lens, you'll have already come into to these sorts of problems. But for most people on APS-Cs, we're stuck at having a kind of an 18mm as our lowest point. Unless you buy specialist lenses, you know, there aren't many kit lenses that come with things that are 16mm or 12mm, and yet you've got a much more reduced sensor size, and that means that the field of view is completely different. So if you're on a full frame camera at 16mm, you will notice that there is more of a sort of fisheye effect at 16mm than there is at 20mm. Suddenly, you're going to have that same problem with this. If you've never used anything that's below sort of 18mm before, you will suddenly get to a point and you'll go, actually, what I should be doing is something completely different. You'll get that sort of bevel effect. And largely, that kind of bevel effect is easy enough to take off in Photoshop or in Lightroom because there are tools built in to allow you to do this. The other problem that we've got here today is that, and I mentioned this earlier, the castle is sort of right up that way and my camera is right down here. I can't really get much higher with the camera. Even if I stood up and I moved the camera as high up as possible, I would still be looking up at it. And because of that, you get this problem where you get the verticals not being completely straight. Again, this is something that you can resolve in Lightroom. So it's not necessarily something that you have to worry about on the day, but it is something to be aware of, because I tell you what, having enough space around your subject can make a hell of a difference. So what I'm going to do is just set a few settings up on here, and then I'll come back and show you exactly what I've got. Now, I said you could take images handheld on a day like today, and actually there are very few times when you absolutely must have a tripod, and I do think that sometimes people are a little bit over-reliant on them. But there are also plenty of cases, of course, when you want that slower shutter speed in order to get the right image. But this castle is taken handheld, and as you can see, the verticals on this have a little bit of a problem. You see how the towers seem to narrow as they reach the top. Well, this is purely because of the angle of the camera. And I don't always mind shots that aren't corrected like this. And there are some photography competitions who accept that it's part of taking photos and don't mind at all. Of course, if you can get them straight in the camera, you'd also likely get better marks from the judges. Okay, so the camera's all set up. Now I've put this on to record for a minute so you can actually see the shot. Like I said, 2/50th of a second, f11 because plenty of light around, 160 because there's plenty of light around, f11 in particular because we want to get as much of the castle in focus as possible. We don't want a shallow depth of field on this. The subject is the building. Right now we may have to modify this a little bit because the sun keeps coming in and out. There are a few clouds around today and it doesn't get that much darker, but we might be losing about a stop of light when we're doing this, so that's kind of important. Now the shot itself, this is where things start to get interesting, because I am probably about level with this here. And so you can see what's happening on the 10mm is actually we've got an awful lot of stuff up here. But you can see if you run a vertical line down here, that actually we're kind of, it looks like the castle's moving back. And in some instances, that might be desirable. If you wanted to show sort of a really worm's eye view of a building, that might be the effect that you're looking for. But for a lot of photography where you're dealing with buildings, what you really want is to actually distort the image when you get back, so that it actually looks a bit straight, so it looks a little bit more spot on. In order to do this, right, what we're doing is actually we're focusing on this first bit here. Like I said, we're at f11, so we don't have to worry too much about this. This is right the way out at 10mm. And now let's just do something very quickly. If I just unscrew this, swing this around a bit, and I put this onto, oh, no, done that wrong. If I put this onto 18, and then I move us back to where we are. Okay, so that is at 18mm. You can see how close we are in here. So if I was sat here with an 18mm lens, that's all I'd be able to get. And in order to get the whole thing in, I'd have to take a panorama. And for a lot of APS-C users, that's where you are right now. Many of you, I know, will have gone and bought this lens or a similar lens to something like that. So by taking it out again, by doing that, the 10mm lens means that we can get so much more in this shot, and it means that we're actually going to get an interesting partial shot without actually having to be miles away. And that's why a lot of people use these sorts of lenses for buildings, because buildings themselves can be massive, and because you need to be able to get everything in one go.
And here I am getting everything in one go. Now, it's a bit of a shame that this particular area of the castle had algae in the water, but this is something that happens in nature and you just have to live with it. As it is, I'm quite happy with this shot, although I'm never going to be truly thrilled with shots like this. They're a little bit too picture postcard for my liking. Nevertheless, you can see how well the lens is performing here, and that even with a crop, I've still got what would be foreground interest in the image. And that's the beauty of these wider angle lenses, and why you might want to consider one in the future.
I had a lovely little chat there with somebody who saw that I was filming and was really, really interested in the camera and everything. So if you do see somebody and they're making a video like this, or they're out taking photos, you know what? Most photographers absolutely love talking to other photographers. So if you do, say hello. It's not a bad thing. Okay, so I'm all focused, I'm all set up. I've put this as a bracket. Now I've changed the way that I'm bracketing my photographs. In the past, what I've done was have a 9-shot bracket, which means that you take 9 images, and of those, maybe 2 or 3 of them you use. Well, I've changed that now to a 3-shot bracket, which means that when I release this in just a second, what you're going to get is a really quick burst of stuff. You don't have to spend ages waiting for it, which is one of the problems that you have to do with 9 brackets. But you do get the different levels of brightness throughout the image. The camera is now telling me this is a little bit too dark, so I'm going to take the F number down rather than anything else. So we're at F10. That solved the problem. I'm going to focus again. Now I've got this on, got my Q settings on 2 seconds, so I'm not going to knock the camera or anything when I touch it. We'll release that off, and here we go. The other thing you'll have to remember is if you come to somewhere like this, there is always going to be somebody in a shot, and you're always going to have to edit them out. That's fine. That's the thing that happens. Don't worry about it. So that's the shot. That's what I've got. I've got 3 frames there, which we can play around with. It's going to be great. And it looks pretty good from where we are. Now, I might take this back into Lightroom today and show you what the edit is. Although I won't do a full edit on it, I don't think. But potentially where I am right now, I'm really kind of happy with this. One other thing to remember, if you find yourself sort of taking a lot longer to compose your shot, if you want, and if you're in an X-T3, is turn on boost mode. So what boost mode is, occasionally your screen will go dark when you've got the camera turned on. What boost mode is going to do is it's going to keep that screen bright, and it means that you can keep using that thing right the way from start to finish. Your screen's not going to go dark. You don't have to press a button halfway through because you've lost the picture on it. You're going to see all the way through. What I would suggest is that when you finish doing that, turn boost mode off again, because it does drain your battery a little bit more. But it's really useful to use when you're just framing shots, especially when you're messing around with these tripods, because sometimes the plates on these tripods can be a bit of a pain to get right.
This is going to be the final shot of the castle, but I have one more image to show you in just a moment, so stay tuned for that. On the whole, I was incredibly pleased with the images that I got today, not really because of the light, but because it helped me to understand more about how my lens worked, and I hope in many respects it's done the same for you. This particular image was a bit of a favourite and a good candidate for some fantasy style Photoshop work in the future. Let me know if you'd like to see that in the comments. What I really like about this image though was the sense of imposition that the castle gives you, and a lot of that is thanks to the wide angle lens and the more distortion that you see with closer objects. It really is an interesting effect, and one that I definitely need to play with more in the future.
Well, it's been a really pleasant trip to Nunney Castle, and something that I really needed. Last week, I went to Wales. I had a 3-hour drive to a place in Wales that I wanted to visit for a while, only to find out that they were suffering from a couple of things. And the first of those things was blue-green algae, which is horrendously poisonous. And I did notice in the moat down here, and you'll probably notice it in some of the shots, the water is green, and that's because it's got a layer of algae on it and nothing else. The problem with that, of course, is that if you're messing around, you're wading through it, you're potentially taking kind of dangerous materials with you wherever you go. And so that wasn't a good thing. And then I actually got to the place that I wanted to visit, and there was a flood. And I couldn't get to the location that I wanted. And there was a specific shot that I'd gone there for. I went there to try and get a shot at sunset, and I just couldn't get it. And it was disheartening. And after kind of a year of being locked down and unable to go to the places that I really wanted to go, and particularly these last 6 months have been particularly bad, it was absolutely disheartening. And I think that one of the things that I know I need, and I think a lot of people are going to end up needing, is a little bit of a kick to get them back into normality again. It's certainly something that has, it plagues me when, the lockdown was eased. I can't say lifted because it's not gone completely, but the lockdown was eased at a point where I was feeling that I didn't want to go outside the house, let alone go and make videos like this. And it's not that I don't want to make videos like this. It's not that I don't enjoy it. It's just that I didn't feel capable anymore of doing it. I almost scared myself into inactivity. It's so easy to do. And I do worry that there are other people out there who are actually in exactly that same boat. The fact that I'm having to make these videos pushed me to go out, and the fact that I went out was a really, really good thing for me. But without having to make stuff like this, I'm not sure that I would have done. I'm not sure that I'd have been out today, and yet being outside, especially in this weather, is ridiculously good for you. And not just physically and mentally, but for your soul. I think it's great to visit places like this. And whilst this isn't an archetypical sunset shot or anything, it's still a shot that I think I quite like, and I'm going to play with a little bit more and see if I can get something even more fun out of it. We'll see when I get back into Lightroom, but that's part of the fun of coming to places like this. Half of the job is seeing what you get in the camera, and the other half of the job is seeing what you can turn it into when you get back to the computer.
Finally today, I did want to show you the one shot that I got from Wales last week. These boats are something that I really liked the look of at the time, and the intention was always there to make them a black and white image. Personally, I was really pleased with the framing on this. I think I've got it just about right. And of course, this wasn't shot with the 10-24, it was actually shot with the 18-135 all the way out at 18mm. But it was a shot that I wanted to show you, and it's a shot that I'd love to know what you think about in the comments. Well, that's it for today's video. I want to thank you ever so much for sticking around to the end. It always floors me that people are so kind when they comment on the videos and have said how much they enjoy them and how much they get from them. And I really hope that I'll be able to produce stuff that kind of lives up to that in the future. Until then, if you've liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're new here and you would like to see more, please click on the little subscribe button, the little bell icon that pops up, and then the all notifications tab as well. And that way you're not going to miss out on anything when I release a new video. Until next time, thanks very much once more, and don't forget, keep taking those pictures.